Can you call the roll, Janie?
Carl Hayes. Dave Amspoker. Scott Brackett, I can see also, I'm gonna say yes. Charles Burrows. Mike Finnegan. Charles Gerlich.
Here.
Von Stutzman.
Here.
And we have.
All right, thank you. We'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. You can stay unmuted. You just have to say it. But stand up. There's our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice, indivisible, under God, and with liberty and justice for all. Sorry about that. That never happened. Okay, we all should have a copy of the minutes from our last meeting in the pack. Do we have any additions or corrections to the minutes? You have to unmute. Okay, do we have a motion on the minutes?
This is Bill. I move to approve the minutes as recorded.
This is Tim. I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Dave, you have to push the unmute before you talk. All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, we have a unanimous agreement on the minutes of the meeting. What do we do about the public comments at this point? Nothing?
Sir, we did not receive any public comment in my office before the deadline to do so.
It's been handled legally. Okay, thank you very much. The business staff report.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Hayes, and commission members. It's been a while since we've been able to get together. It's good to see everybody. Just to update you on a few items. Out in the industrial park, we recently removed 2 modular units off of a property which was known as the Shock Center. This is in preparation for future sale of that property. We have 2 other units that are larger, still needing to be removed, but due to the COVID-19, we put a hold on that to see, until we can see where finances shake out in the near future. We're also, in regards to the roadways that we have on that grant, we have plans that have been 60% complete for their roadway, and those have been submitted to the county for their review. We hope to have that finalized within the next month and be able to have the numbers and go out for bid on that project. One of the other things that we're working on is in regards to some grant opportunities additionally. And we do that through the Western Arizona Economic Development District and our SEDS, which is our Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. So Lisa and I recently put together 2 major projects on that, and we listed it out in our SEDS. And what that's going to do is that's going to enable us to use those projects when we submit for EDA grants. Another project that we're looking at is establishing fiber to more areas of the industrial park. We've seen this as a concern when talking with industrial businesses. And so actually tomorrow we'll have our first Zoom meeting where we have about 20 businesses going to be participating in the call with Frontier and the Arizona Commerce Authority to discuss, how we can potentially bring fiber to more areas. With those costs, though, I think part of the discussion is also going to be, grant opportunities to offset some of those costs. Hit on rail into the park in April of 2020, which is the last time that we have a report on cars stored. We were at 630 cars stored in the park, and then we were at 151 cars that were switched coming into the businesses. When you compare that to April 2019, we had about 697 cars stored at the park, about 184 cars switched. Back in 2018, there were substantially less going on. We were at about 241 cars stored and 115 switched in the same month. What we've noticed in the last, since COVID-19 came and then going through that, we noticed a big, obviously, decline of interest. People looking at potential projects, and even the projects that we were working on, they kind of sat back and needed to wait and see. So just to kind of give you some insight, in February, we submitted 2 sites at the industrial park for potential projects. Now keep in mind, a potential project is, it could potentially fit at the industrial park, but they're looking throughout the entire Southwest. So that was in February. March came, and by then, the pandemic had been basically in full swing around here. Started having, closure, and we had 0 sites, 0 projects that have looked to do anything. And then we noticed in April a slight uptick. We had 1 project that came in inquiring. But then in May, and these are sites submitted, in May, they jumped to 3 sites that we submitted on. So we have other things that we're doing as well. We have prospects that are looking at the park. And we saw the same decreases. So in February, we went from 3 prospects, March 0, April 1, May 6 prospects that we worked on. And in June already, we're at 5 prospects this month. So we are seeing a real uptick in businesses, looking at doing some things. We're also seeing some interest in businesses contacting us from Southern California. Just today, we've already got a call in from a business that from the Bakersfield area looking at potential other options. So we are seeing with, depending on what California does and where they decide to go with a lot of the stuff that they do, our business will increase. With that, we've been updating our websites with COVID-19 response to all the businesses. We've been in touch with businesses on a regular basis with updates of various kinds. We've just been very proactive in talking with the industries in the industrial park. So that's my update. If anybody has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Bennett, this is Bill. I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. In the contract with Patriot Rail, do you know if they have time limit or length of time they can block the road, specifically Mojave Drive?
I don't know off the top of my head if it's written in there, but I can do some research and get back with you on that. Obviously, the more industry that we bring into the park, that becomes more of an issue. I talked with another company that was going to be doing a substantial amount of cars, and in order to get to the site, which we have available, that they'd be interested in, we'd have to bring those cars across Mojave Airport Drive. And so, that is, and it depends on the hour. There's times where that roadway is not blocked at all, and then you'll come at a certain time and when they're doing their switching, and then that's where your probably longest wait time will be. But I'll check into that and get back with you on that, Bill.
Okay, I appreciate that. It was about 11 o'clock in the morning and they were doing switching back and forth, but they never cleared the highway to release the traffic. And UPS trucks, semi trucks were doing U-turns, and I saw a real safety concern there. And I got there after it was stopped, and I was stopped dead still for 20 minutes. So that's something we might want to consider. Thank you.
Yep, I'll check.
No more questions?
Yeah,
I did review that contract, Charles, and there's no provision in there limiting their blockage time. I can tell you that the general rules, the railroads always have the right of way and they can do whatever they want. Some smaller cities, they think nothing of blocking off the whole town for overnight. So it's going to be jawing them to have some consideration when, especially it's a busy time of day. If you're already committed to that route, as you leave down there at industrial, you still have two more options to swing around and come on flight line off to the right if you're coming into the airport. So I know a lot of people, I've seen them do, as soon as they see the train, they make the next turn. So there is a way, but 20 minutes is a long time. I agree. No other comments or questions for Bennett?
I'll just say the Patriot Rail's been great to work with, and anything that we can bring up to them, I'm sure if it's within their ability, they'll be receptive.
Thank you. Okay, the airport report, airport manager, you ready, Steve? You have to unmute yourself.
yeah, this is Dave Amspoker. I had a question for Bennett.
Okay.
Okay, Bennett, did any businesses out here at the airport close because of the nationwide shutdown? Or did they all pretty much stay open as essential businesses?
Yeah, Dave, most of those businesses stayed open. I would say like probably 98% of them. The ones that I noticed that closed, or they actually told me, I know Goodyear had nationally shut down their plants. And so that was a national decision. Whether or not locally they could have kept the plant up and open due to the business that they had, I don't know. From what I understand, though, it was a national decision. The company out at the airport that was affected substantially is MC Squared. They do trade show exhibits. And so with that, that industry just, it just stopped. And so obviously there wasn't the ability to support that industry. I did notice that their cars were coming back to the plant, and as Las Vegas opens and other areas where you have that type of industry which feeds that open, those industries will come back online. But we weren't substantially affected from all my communications and talking with those businesses.
Okay, thank you.
And that's at the industrial park.
Okay, now you're up, Steve.
All right, you can all hear me?
Yes.
Hot dog. All right. Based aircraft were around 100. Stored aircraft were up to 210. That's about 43 or 46 that we've gotten in the last month or so. Aviation fuels, let's see here. Bear with me. April's the last report we've got. 6,322 gallons, about 1,600 of that was avgas, 4,700 Jet A. Financial update. Year-to-date revenues, 1,223,309. Sorry, take that back. That's last year's. This year's, no, that was right. This year's expenses, 776,793 to date. May expenses, 56,345. Again, this is going to be revised because I just don't like the setup on this, as I've complained before. Revenues, the closest month, May, 50,439. Do note on revenues, the next time we get together, there'll be a significant difference, which I'll speak to here in a little bit. Encumbrances at present, year-to-date, 62,967, roughly. So jumping into, and there's a lot here, so I'm going to run quickly through it. If you have any questions, interrupt me, please. FAA and ADOT coordination on our runway grants. The numbers have come in, and we're about $280,000 over what the FAA was going to give us, which was roughly $2.6 million. FAA is in the process right now of seeing if they can't dig up the money. If they can't dig up the money, the worst case scenario that I discussed with the engineer this morning was that we do 3/4 of the project now, and then basically do the last quarter in 2 months once the new fiscal year starts. Again, I'll be pestering FAA tomorrow in regards to seeing how they're doing and digging additional funds up. The ADOT grant for Taxiway Bravo, that design is underway, so that's moving. The CARES Act grant, which is $69,000, that's been approved by FAA. We have our app in. I'm assuming we'll have funds relatively soon. The environmental review's in process. FAA is giving me an estimate they'll have that done in June. And then once that's done, we'll be going for a relocation of fence, and I'll speak to this a little later, out by the crossing runway in August or September. The master plan meeting continues. Final meeting we're shooting for is late June of this year. On development and maintenance projects, the draw site testing is complete. It's been submitted to DOJ. I'm working with the legal team on strategies for the cleanup, because we are positive DOJ is not going to be easy to work with on this. So that's in queue. I continue to bug people in the storage industry. Had a phone call late last week with another interested party that both Bennett and I are going to be working with. They actually want to buy property to dismantle some airplanes. Again, we can't sell airport property, but part of the land conveyance we could do. So that's in the, we'll see where that goes. I think you all know this, but we now have 3 entities out here doing aircraft storage: Kingman Airline Services, Frontiera Flight Holdings, and Ameriflight. We'll see if we can't make that 4. Policy development, we continue to move on that in regards to non-payments. We are doing weekly tallies of tie downs, and we will be beginning, we are in the process of doing an assessment of who owns what, who's paying, and then based on that, we'll move forward on going after folks who've not been paying for their tie down. The annual meeting with FAA, ADOT, our engineers and planners for the airport CIP, which is connected to grant projects. We're shooting for that next Wednesday. Right now, I'm anticipating adding 2 projects into that 5-year CIP. One is a rebuild for Taxiway Delta. That would be about 2 years out. And what's driving that basically is the fact that I'm anticipating late this year, a return by ADOT testing our pavement quality. And when that happens, what we're anticipating is the pavement condition index for taxiway Delta is going to show that it's less than 55, which is both the federal and the state failure of pavement. And so where I'm going with this basically is we're shooting, I hope, to get additional RJs, Embraers, maybe 737s and A320s in here, which basically means that we need to have that pavement up to snuff. And again, this is a couple of years out, but nonetheless, we're going to add that in. The other thing I'll be talking to the state tomorrow on is the possibility, and I don't know if they have the money, but we're all anticipating a sweep on aviation funds on the state level and at the legislature. I believe they're going to have a special session here in another few weeks. And so what I'm going to propose to the state is ask them if they're up for a $400,000 grant to us, which means a $40,000 match on our part to replace all the PAPIs here at the airport. The ones for runway 3 and 21 are 20 years old. One of our maintenance staffers, who's Bill Nye, the science guy when it comes to electronics, has rewired one of them. The other two on the crosswind runway are at least 25 years old, if not older. So they all need to be replaced. In fact, it's getting hard to get parts for some of them. So I'm going to see if the state's up for that. It's not scheduled on our CIP at this point, but again, if it's only a $40,000 match, I'm thinking that it might be something we can do. But nonetheless, I need to make a phone call and see if that's going to work. We continue to outfit the pilot's lounge. I believe we're getting close on that. The gate combination changes are coming. I'll be talking to Public Works. What we're talking about right now is 3 different combinations. One, which will stay the same up by BLM, and then dividing all the other, and this would be for the auto gates and the manual gates, the other combinations into 2 groups. The second group will basically, first group will start from the south of the BLM gate down to our gate here at the administrative building. And then the second combination will be southwest of that. And right now the idea is we'll use for the first group the runway, the main runway, say main runway. So it'll be 0321. And then for the other group, it will be the cross runway, which is 1735. And I'll get some signs made up. If any of you have an issue with that, let me know. I've run it by a couple of people. It doesn't seem to be a problem, but it's about time we change the combinations. The airport stormwater plan is complete. And we sent something off to the industrial park folks, giving them a heads up that stormwater is a concern here. But again, on the airport side, we're done with that. The taxiway lights and signs for Delta Taxiway are repaired and operational. A shout out to Paul, our maintenance guy. We had it budgeted for, I believe, $16,000 to do those repairs. We did them for 3. So a huge cost savings there, thanks to his, excuse me, his work. Terminal fencing, which you've all noticed, is in the process of being moved. There'll be some landscaping that goes on there as well, partially. So that's in the works. I think I mentioned this at the last meeting, the airport ARC vehicle. I don't know if it has been surplus, but it will be, so it's no longer on site. I will be working with the fire department on beginning some training for them and some coordination in regards to when they come out to respond to incidents out here. where they stage, and some basics there. Use agreement for aircraft storage is completed and in use. I'll be talking to an outfit down at Canal Airport here. We're going back and forth on the agreement, but that's basic thing is done. The Frontier Group, they've flown out a total of 5 CRJs. They still have 4 here in storage. Ameriflight has 4 Metroliners stored, an additional 3 that will show up this May. And as I think you've all noticed, we've been mowing hundreds of acres of area. The tumbleweeds are mostly gone, though you wouldn't know it the last couple of days. Weeds we've been spraying, World War II debris we continue to remove. It's amazing what we continue to find. And we're uncovering more airport drainage. We're researching an idea of an airport poster, possibly for marketing. We have a private entity that's working something up on that. There might be, and I say might be 100% grant funding in this coming fiscal year. So we'll see where that goes. I'll believe it when I see it. We continue to work with FAA through the 1,800-acre land release. The rates and fees study is ongoing. I should have a draft report soon. Staff has been addressing questions that people have been asking us in regards to a possible FBO sale. The airport public works and the airport crew working together. We basically built 1.3 miles of infield taxiways for aircraft storage, which any who fly have seen. We continue to get interviews occasionally or write articles in regards to the airport, mostly for aircraft storage. As I mentioned earlier, about 46 new aircraft are parked in the field at this point. A large past due rental amount has been received, about $158,000. Again, you'll notice that in the next report to you, the next meeting. Ancient Flight West has been using the airport. So far, they've had 3 flights in. I believe there's another flight due this coming Wednesday. And they're doing food deliveries for the Wallapai tribe. They fly in here and then basically go via Grant up to Peach Springs. The airport budget, which you'll notice here in a little bit, was significantly reduced due to the COVID situation. And of course, limitations which we're going through right now are in place for many city meetings due to the COVID situation. The airport office, which some of you are aware of, was closed for public access for about 2 months. We're working with the Kingman Aviation Heritage Center on a temporary lease for storage of aircraft for the future Air Museum. That'll be off the west end of the airport. We've increased random security on the air side of the airport. What you'll notice if you don't have a life and you come out here when it's dark at 3 and 4 in the morning or 1 in the morning at random times, we now have our security folks driving out amongst the stored airplanes. And that's to send a message to the community and any folks that think that they want to come out here and get some neat airplane parts for their rec rooms, that it's just not the thing to do. And since we've been doing that, I haven't heard anything from Cassie in regards to any parts from airplanes disappearing. I'm now tracking and documenting any aircraft that come in that have a higher weight than 12,500 pounds. And again, that is documentation to drive the FAA to get a higher strength coefficient for Delta taxiway when we get to the point of getting it rebuilt. Again, I'm thinking that's a couple years out, so we should be able to get some decent numbers with that. And again, I mentioned the possible grant sweep with the legislature. And then just some other basic stuff here. And it's always interesting when you look at your notes and then you can't read them. Now, that's kind of scary. This is the third quarter. We figure at this point, and this isn't exact, that we've mowed about 6,538 acres of areas we've mowed, weeds we've cleared. And again, third quarter numbers, we're figuring just on the light and sign inspections, which we do once a day, so roughly 361 days a year, not counting for people who get sick. That we will, at this point, travel about 1,825 miles doing that. And then just another little ditty here for you. Mention it with the EAA, but for those of you who weren't at that meeting, I've checked this through the FAA and gotten grant history for the airport, and I've run it through our engineer. So this is pretty hot stuff, though it's not going to sound like it. Typical airports, major projects like us, you typically get one of those every 36 years, typically, say if it's a grant project. Checking the records, KAA, the last two grant projects pretty much matched that. And that's again, one major project in 36 months. In 17 months, as I think you all know, we've taken on a master plan, which is almost done. We're taking on a runway rebuild, which is just about to start. We're doing a taxiway design for Bravo through the CARES Act, for fence relocation, an 1,800-acre land release, which again, for most airports of our nature, it's not done because they don't have that kind of property. And then we've constructed 1.3 miles of taxi lanes. So instead of one project in 3 years, we've got all that going in 17 months. The other thing is, as far as grants numbers right now, that totals $3,624,000 that we're on the dock for. Jump into airport hangar occupancy. 44 occupied present. We have 2 that are vacant. It's interesting because people have been coming and going, moving around in these hangars lately. And that's one of the reasons you haven't seen Paul around, because typically when a hangar's vacant, we go in, we clean everything out, we grease the doors and make sure everything's working properly before the next tenant comes in. The covered tie downs, full hangar occupied. I believe the wait list, not a lot of changes there. The executive hangars too. The T hangars, believe it or not, 0 at this point. And the covered tie downs, I believe it's 6 or 7. Ongoing leasing developments, the flight line area for 5 acres. We anticipate getting our grubby mitts on a backhoe sometime in the future here. Once that happens, you're going to see all of the gravel, all of the millings that are out on that 5 acres disappear. Again, mentioned the 1,800-acre land release. We're moving that through. You'll note that 5 trees, at least 5, maybe 6, have come down in the last couple of weeks. Now that we have our Kubota back, you'll notice those disappear probably in the next couple of days. My understanding is that we're still planning on a EAA, I'm going to call it Airport Day or fly-in for the 4th quarter of this year. That's still in the planning stages, given the fact that with the whole COVID thing, all of it's kind of strange. And that's it for my report. Any questions? And I apologize for the helicopter in the background making noise.
Over on outfitting the pilot's lounge, which is ongoing. Who's doing that?
That's been a team of, I believe, Gary, Lisa, and Bennett.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Okay.
Gary, Lisa, and Bennett.
Who was it?
Gary, Lisa, and Bennett.
Okay. I don't believe any of them are pilots. Is that correct? That you know of?
That is my understanding, yes.
It might be a good idea for one of them to talk to some pilots, and because there's some things missing in the pilot's lounge, and I understand it's not finished yet, so it's ongoing. But I've been in a lot of pilots lounge all over the country, and there's some things that are fundamentally needed that are not there as of yet. So if they want to talk to one of us on the commission, and or a couple of us on the commission, I'd be glad to discuss. Just there's a few things that ought to be in there that probably are not. I was over there earlier this afternoon just to see what progress had been made. So if Gary, Lisa, or Bennett are going to continue on that, I'd be glad to discuss this with any of them. And
We'd be happy.
also, did you over on the second page, you've got covered tie downs. You didn't have a number, so I didn't catch that. What is that number?
That number is 6 to 7.
6 or 7? Okay. Thank you.
And I believe Gary had a comment in regards to pilot lounge.
We'd be happy to talk with you, Dave.
Okay. Are you going to be around, say, Wednesday?
Hang on a second. Let me look at the calendar and make sure before I say anything else on that one, just to make double sure.
Well, you're looking, Dave, I have had several conversations with Gary and Lisa. Lisa has ordered a wall map for flight planning. I expressed that we had to have a counter below that map with 3 or 4 plastic chairs is good enough. And then a small table with about 3 chairs for an instructor and student in there. Things that are, to my mind, essential for a pilot's lounge. I've tried to address those issues. As far as the interior decoration, I'm not a decorator. Gary's done a pretty good job of coming up with stuff, but it seems like a lot of the loose ends don't get tied up. There's a big piece of bulletproof glass out of some fighter, and to hang that's going to have to have a steel frame and attached to a stud, and then it needs a label on what it is and what it came out of. So somebody's got to do that, and that's Bill. Someone with the I'll call it the decorating team decides to do something. It gets somebody. It's probably going to sit there. And
Carl?
That's not a problem I feel competent to solve, the decorating part.
Carl, I'm not concerned about the decorating. That it all looks fine. I'll get together with Gary and maybe we can resolve some of my concerns.
I believe Lisa's already ordered the map. And
well, that's good.
We also, I think, need a cork board either in the back room or the outer room. I'm not sure which, to post notices or that type of thing. So there's some fine tuning to do, and certainly throw your input in there. But those are the people that are making the decision on it.
Oh, that's fine. I'll get with Gary sometime later on this week. Gary, are you still on?
Yes, sir.
Have you had a chance to check your calendar?
Yeah, Wednesday looks okay. Probably from noon on, Dave.
I'm sorry?
Noon on.
Noon on.
Okay. I'll see you about 1 o'clock.
Okay, I'll calendar it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve, this is Bill.
Hi, Bill.
I have just a couple probably easy questions. On your second page, about halfway down, you have Ameriflight, 4 Metroliner stored, 3 additional to arrive in May. Did those arrive or are we still expecting them?
Those other 3 were still, 1 has arrived. So there's now 4 out there, so 2 more.
Okay. And then of the 46 new aircraft parked on the field, I know you said 43 to 46, whatever. Are those long-term storage? And I guess my real question is, were we able to attract any airlines to park planes temporarily for the COVID slowdown?
Um, I- the way I will answer that is actually the airport is not the entity attracting these folks per se. In this case, it's Cassie, who's been going out and talking to the companies. And so I would say, other than the 4 Ameriflight airplanes, everything else that's out here is indeed due to the COVID. Now, what I've been doing is negotiating and working with this other outfit out of Pinal County Airport that seems to have a real interest in coming here. I've given them 2 tours, but again, they're the ones that would be working directly with the airlines or the banking or leasing companies that own the airplanes to get them here.
Okay. All right. That answers my question. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yes, Steve?
Yeah.
This is Scott. Somewhat of questions, but more kind of comments. Sorry about that. You noticed that there were 4, you said there were 4 storage companies out here total or whatever. That's something that I feel we should tie into the website or whatever when we list what's going on, even if it's temporary. You know, temporary frontiers didn't work, blah, blah, blah. It's just a website issue that I haven't commented on before, but I think it should be brought into our website. Second question is, you said the airport uncovered drainage when you were doing the additional taxi lanes. Do you have any World War II maps of that, or was it just kind of by guess and by golly that you tripped across the drainage?
By guess and by golly, although we do have maps, but to be very honest, I've not I've not made a copy to give to my maintenance guys for them to utilize when they're out there popping around. Again, part of the dynamic is I like to, being an old operations guy, I like to get out there and actually see it with my own eyeballs. And there are a number of sites, and again, this is where that backhoe, once we get it, the Gavotte is too small, and even the backhoe is going to be complicated, but there are areas out there that don't look, they might have been cleaned 20 years ago, but they haven't been cleaned since, and they need to basically be cleaned out to the point when
Sure.
to the state to get a grant to look at all the drainage we have, what works, what doesn't, do an inventory, first time in 75 years. And they'll get these, the One Army map, I think, that you provided me, but basically go out and see what's working, what isn't. But in the meantime, so they can actually do that, because it'll be by remote control. There's not going to send anybody into those drainage pits. We need to be cleaning out some of those areas. And I found some, there's some subterranean drainage on the Highway 66 side of the runway, the main runway. There's other drainage on the Wallapai side of the runway. And then there's some drainage grates that are out there on the crosswind runway, again on the Route 66 side. All of those need to be easier seen and mapped out. The one thing I was talking about was a drainage swale that is just to the Wallapai side of the closed runway where Frontier has 4 airplanes parked. You can see it just because of the vegetation there, and we maneuvered around it. But I really want to have a better sense of how this whole drainage system here works. There's some complication to it that I'm not a drainage guy, so I don't have a clue. A long-winded answer to your very short question.
Okay, okay. One other comment, and it's a comment, is you had Airport and Public Works did the 1.3 miles of taxiways. Again, upcoming on the website, showing what we're going to do and or showing it done or whatever makes it, then if someone clicks on and looking at our airport, it's a way of advertising progress is being made, which you've done very good progress on all the ADOT grants and the grants that we're looking at. So kudos on that. But that's something that, and I'll be talking, and I know others have lists with the web and what we're expecting out of that too. So that was just a comment.
Thanks. Yeah. Hi,
While we've got you there, I noticed that you mentioned the Angel Flights West have made, I think, 3 food deliveries. They're making another one this Wednesday, and I think that one will be the last one.
Thank you.
Sure.
No more questions? Well, we also sold a good bit of gas to the Army. They brought the National Guard up on last Tuesday and a couple of Blackhawks, and then picked them up later that night. So there was some good Jet A sales there. Okay, on our next item is the budget review. And Tina, if you can talk about that, it'd be great. You have to unmute.
I should know that. Thank you so much. So thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Commissioners, and thank you for having me here today. So the agenda item is the Budget 21 review, but Chairman Hayes had reached out to me, a few months ago and asked that I also provide on a quarterly basis what the private sector refers to as a balance sheet and income statement. And so since this is the Budget 21 review, I thought that it might be important to go ahead and still report on, although it's not a quarter end, still report on the net position of the airport. So I have included what the private sector refers to as a balance sheet and income statement, what we refer to as a statement of net position and statement of revenues and expenditures through April 30th in your packet. And I can quickly review those with you, or if you've had a chance to review them and you just wanted me to provide those to you, Chairman, for your reference, and we can move into the Budget 21. It's entirely up to you how you'd like to handle those 2 items.
Well, I think the best thing is if you can get them to us, through Janie, then we can individually review them, process, and start to figure out how this system works. And the next quarter, when you can come, we'll have some more questions. I'm sure we're all very green at this, but we're getting there. And this would help a great deal. And in the meantime, we can perhaps put some questions together and just submit them to you in email, and you can respond that way.
Okay, great. So question, was my packet attached to the agenda?
Yes.
So you did receive. Okay, all right. No, it's quite all right. I can review those with you next quarter. I wanted to make sure that you had the budget figures in front of you as we review these. That's all.
Yeah, Tina, I was curious, when we're looking at expenses for January, February, March, and April of 2020, we don't know what those expenses were, but yet we know what the expenses were for May, and May just ended like 8 days ago. Do you have any idea what the expenses were for the first 4 months of this year?
So we report on a fiscal year, Commissioner Anspoker. So they actually, so are you looking at the statement of revenues and expenditures where it lists all of the expenses through April 30th? Is that what you're looking at
Well,
right now?
What I'm looking at is
If I-
page 2 of 4 of Steve's report.
Oh, okay. Let's see, let me pull up Steve's report because I sent it over to him. So let me just pull that up and I can get on the same page as you, okay?
Great.
So everybody's on the same page, no pun intended. When I did up my my report, which I read earlier, Tina, I did not have the numbers for those other months. So when I drew that up, and because we were in the time bind, I just sent it out. So that's what Dave is speaking to. And actually the numbers are, or the months are, just so we're all on the same page. January 2020, February, March, and April. That was,
So you're looking for the, sorry, Steve.
no, it was expenses for those 4 months, January through April of this year.
Okay, so you want that, would you like them by each month, Commissioner, or do you want me to just add them together and give them to you in total?
Well, either way is going to be more information than we currently have. So
Okay.
whichever is easiest.
I'll give them to you. I'll give them to you by month. That would be a little bit easier. That's the way that they reflect in my report. So
Okay.
January's expenses were $66,511.
Okay.
February's expenses were $69,713.
March.
March was $61,106. And April was, let me make sure I give you the right column, $74,640.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have one question for you.
Sure.
On the operational expenses, it's got supplies and services for 641 and internal services. And I take it the supplies and services like the power bill, paying electrical bill and all that type. Am I correct in assuming that? Because I know that's a chunk.
You're correct. And it's also consulting fees, it's website design fees, it's any repair and maintenance. That's what's lumped into the supplies and services line item.
Okay. Internal services. Give me a little better brief on that one.
Sure, absolutely. So every division, so we have divisions within the city that provide services, whose customers are really other city divisions. So for instance, IT, they provide services to every single division. Our building maintenance, our fleet services, they provide services to all of the different divisions. So all of the divisions who utilize those services, which we call internal services, must pay a fee to operate those budgets. That's what internal services are.
Could we get a breakdown of that separate from this?
Sure,
okay.
Absolutely. I can break it out for you line by line.
No rush. Thank you.
Yep.
I have a question about that same internal services. So I understand the concept of it. How is the proportions determined?
Sure. So each one is proportioned a little differently, and it's so for instance, building maintenance is broken out by square footage of the building, and it's also taken into consideration how many employees are housed in each of the buildings, and also whether or not our building maintenance division actually maintains the building. So in the airport's case, you have an outside company to provide the janitorial services. So your allocation is reduced greatly compared to some of the other divisions that actually use building maintenance to provide the janitorial services.
Okay, it's a good example. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tina, on the income, that's pretty basic, and I think everybody knows exactly what that is. But really, all of the expenses could be broken down substantially, especially capital, so we know what we did buy this year or this month or this quarter, and you know, we'll have a wish list for capital for the next budget, and we'll try and find out what that's going to cost, and so that'll help us build the budget for next year. We know what we're doing this year, and as long as that's ongoing, we'll have a much better picture of that.
Okay, absolutely, I can do that.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? I think you've answered a lot. We're getting the kind of information we need, and Scott and I just recently had a meeting with Travis Lingenfelder, and he pointed out to us something that we didn't know, and I don't know. We're never told, and I wasn't smart enough to look. There's some code sections in the municipal code, exactly what it is we're supposed to do in much greater detail than we had any idea what we were supposed to do. So we'll try and comply with all of that in the very near future, and what you're doing will fit right in with that.
Great.
Thank you.
If I may add something in here, you know, this budget year has been odd to say the least because of COVID. So a lot of the process that we typically would follow got somewhat truncated. So what I wanted to do was share some of the projects that I'm going to say are on hold. I'm not going to say they're dropped, but they're on hold because of the COVID situation. If I recall correctly, we cut out of the airport budget about $167,000, a pretty large amount. And that's not to say these things aren't going to get done. They just aren't going to get done this coming fiscal year. So that being the case, the hangar gate down by the hangar complex, that's on hold. The segmented circle, we have $6,000 in there to deal with that this coming year. The taxi lane down by Mr. Gaines, that's on hold. That was $20,000. I had some tie down anchors that we were going to put up where by hangar A, where a bunch of jets have been parked. That's on hold. The money's appropriated so we can use it for something else. We're not going to put tie down anchors and chains up there. We were going to extend drainage down towards Mr. Blumenthal's hangar. That's on hold. And then, of course, the Shadeport project. So I just wanted to be upfront with everybody. And normally I would share this probably 2 or 3 months ahead of this process. But just so you all know where things are at. From my standpoint, we elected to go after grant match projects. The CARES Act one being one that was not anticipated at all, $69,000. And again, the premise there is to relocate some fence, which I'll speak to later, where we can park additional airliners.
On that general subject, may I speak? This is Tim. Have you really seen a direct impact or perceived direct impact on the virus situation on the airport as far as airport income? And part 2 of that is it seems that we may be coming into a period where the airport may benefit greatly from the change of business atmosphere with the airlines and airliners that are out of service right now. So I'm just curious if the decision to cut the budget was just based on an overall perception that there's going to be less money for everybody throughout the city, or is there actual impact on the airport?
I can actually answer that question, Commissioner. So when we meet with all of the divisions, so let me backtrack. Clearly, the airport fund, the airport operating budget was not going to be as impacted as the general fund was by this pandemic. And so when we look at budgeting, we look at a 5-year forecast. And when we asked the airport to cut their budget, it was not solely driven on COVID related items. As a matter of fact, our estimated revenues for fiscal year 21 are greatly increased because of the commercial airliners possibly being parked there. So you are correct in that respect. We looked at it as much of our budget for the airport is used for capital projects, the large capital projects, even if it's through grant matching or whatnot. And so when we said you need to reduce your budget, it was mostly related to being able to meet the 5-year forecast and ensuring that we had enough cash reserves and fund balance to continue to provide our normal operating budget with some COLA increases, as well as continue to fund capital projects going forward.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much for being with us today. I appreciate it very much, Tina.
You're very welcome. And if you ever need anything, by all means, please reach out to me.
Will do. Okay, next item is, we're done on the financial statements.
It's a website.
The airport website. So are you back here with us, Bennett?
Well, maybe I can start off on that.
Oh, there he is. Okay, you're there, Bennett?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Tim. Or what, Bennett, do you want to discuss more about the website from what you said before?
No, I didn't have any comments on the website, other than that it's been finished up to the point that it was, it went live. At that point, it was basically turned back over to Steve to make sure that everything else was going to get added that needed to be added in regards to any additional content that might be missing.
Okay.
I don't know if Tim has any comments. It sounded like he might.
Yes. I was just going to say, yeah, I did go through the site. I went to the site map, and there was roughly 41 items on the site map, give or take, 1 or 2, and went through and made notations on about 17 of the items. Clearly, everybody knows there's different pieces of content probably still needed. And the list includes things that are just either suggestions or thoughts on different content we had to improve it. I sent out that list to the other 2 folks that are on the subcommittee for the website on the commission, and I can share that with anybody else that's interested. They're really just my draft notes. I took the sitemap and actually wrote notes on every single item that I thought we could do something with or was waiting for something. There's a lot of stuff that I think is great on there. There's a lot of things we need to do to finish populating the site, and there's a couple of things that look a little redundant in that. But I will clean up those notes, and I propose to meet with other subcommittee members and sit down and just look at each piece and talk about it. So we're all looking at the same thing. I've spoken with a couple people by the phone, and it's a little tough to discuss the website by phone when we're all looking at something different, or somebody's on a mobile device and somebody's on a computer. It's been a little tricky. So we're going to try to arrange a meeting, just walk through it. I think we can put together some material to contribute. I have not spoken with Steve at all about the website, really. So I don't know what input he has, but we'll try to loop him into our discussion as well, I think. I think that's about all I can say right now, other than, we need to put together kind of a report for you guys. And would that go to you, Bennett, or send it to you?
I would send it to Lisa and CC Steve on it.
Okay. So yeah, like I said, it's kind of a really messy set of notes right now, but mostly my notes to go over it with other people, and then we'll write up probably something a little more formal with suggestions on it. But at least I'm happy to see it's been launched, it's up, and we can definitely do more to kind of put a sales pitch on coming to our airport. I see several things we can do to help that. So, but that's pretty much what I have for now.
Yeah, I was rather confused at what you said. My understanding from our previous meetings was that the individual downtown in the city had turned that over to you, Bennett, and that Lisa was taking inputs and had some way to work with you to get new material on there. It is, and now I'm hearing that Steve's responsible for the website. How did?
Well, so I was involved in helping. I was involved in helping develop the site, work with the group that we brought in. Content can be added. Lisa can add content. I would just, in regards to my expertise is not in that content. In regards to the airport side of things, I think Steve would be the best contact, and so he should be part of that process of whatever content it is or whatever, the additions that Tim had mentioned just earlier. I think that would be the best way forward.
Okay, so essentially you're out of the loop on the website, and Lisa's the primary contact person on this, but Steve's responsible. I'm just trying to get a picture of this org chart website.
Yeah, so I was tasked with helping to develop the site, which we got to that point. And there's probably all kinds of content that you guys are going to want on there. And so I would send that to Lisa and work with Steve. If Steve wants to add anything else on there, then that's the route that I think would be the best way.
All right. Any more comments on the website? Questions?
Just for me real quick, I'd like to, my plan is to have a report put together prior to the next commission meeting.
Great. All right, thank you, Tim. The mission statement.
I can take this, Carl, if you'd like.
You all got a copy of that with a packet. I called Charles with one word addition, and the rest of that I thought it was fine, and like some more input and a motion.
Okay. Before we get to that, as you mentioned, we've been working on this, and at our last meeting, we had a draft submitted, and the commissioners wanted more time to review it, which is certainly understandable. The mission statement you have in your packet today is essentially that same one. Under the core values, the first bullet reads, provide a well-maintained facility to the national transportation system, offering Commissioner Chairperson Carl suggests we insert area residents, comma, and then go on with tourists and businesses. That's one suggestion to change, and we can discuss that. Any other questions?
I agree with that sentiment that we should include the community, local community in it.
Do you want the words area residents?
My reason, of course, is that a lot of people use the airport are not residents of Kingman City, but they are residents in the area by and large, or they don't drive here to use their airplane. And yet it seems a little bit extensive to call it Mojave County. Area residents just seem to be more applicable to the situation. And certainly we're looking at businesses, we're looking at tourism, we're looking at travelers, charter, or whatever, and all of that. But the people that live here and store their airplanes and operate from here, I think are a key part of why we even have the airport.
Yep, agreed.
Well, Carl, I think your suggestion of area residents fits the rest of the mission statement tone. So I think it would fit nicely there.
I would agree with that. And I think, what do you think, Scott?
Yes.
So
Any other changes or additions?
All right. In that case, I'll move that we accept the mission statement as listed with the addition of adding area residents.
I'll second that. This is Tim.
You got a second from Tim, a motion from Mr. Burrows. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion passed. I had a discussion with a council member about, okay, we submit this as an approved mission statement, then what? And I didn't get we're gonna get a attaboy, or this becomes part of the city code, or, this is, absolute city policy. But essentially, if no one comes down and says, I don't like this, it's a planning document for how we operate, what we're supposed to accomplish. And there's another issue here that came up. Most of you have expressed to me, and as I have, and we've expressed at meetings, where how do we actually, where we advise the council through staff, we have a council member that comes to our meetings, but there's no real schedule, or we should do this first or second or when. And it was rather embarrassing that it was pointed out to me that all that's right in the Kingman Municipal Code. So we have marching orders from the city council. That's what we're supposed to do. And what we do is request staff to provide the information so that we can make a value judgment or recommendation on that. So we will be incorporating that in the future. And I don't think anybody's been withholding anything as a commissioner, but I'm embarrassed, quite frankly. I've done a lot of legal research, but I never researched the municipal code on the duties of our commission. It was like, we were just created. So I think a lot of my frustrations have gone away with that. And I hope you feel the same when you take a look at the code section, and I will give you those numbers. I will send it out in an email.
Hey, Carl, this is
Carl,
Tim.
oh, I'm sorry.
Maybe, can we have a next agenda possibly to review some maybe highlights or critical points on that municipal code?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That we'll get started with it for sure then, and a review would be possible. Yes.
Carl, regarding the mission statement, I'll go ahead and insert those two words that we approved, and I'll forward this to Janie to be forwarded to all of us, and whatever other areas it needs to be forwarded.
Great. Thank you very much. That'll make it easier for her.
All right.
Okay. New business aircraft storage area changes. And there is a map at the back of your packet. This is, when I first heard about it, I said, Steve, we've got to have more room if this really takes off. He already had it surveyed, had worked out a deal with Public Works. He'll explain it all to you, but talk about somebody that was on the ball way ahead of time. And this is really going to make a difference. And he can go over all the steps that he had to take to do this, but this is not, I think I will, and it magically happen. So Steve, can you explain all of that?
Certainly. So the whole COVID situation started to happen. I happen to be down in Las Vegas, and one of the things I do, since I can't be away from airplanes for very long, where they go off the end of the runway there in Vegas and take photos. So one weekend I'm down there and I took 900 shots in less than an hour. So that's probably an airplane once every minute, minute and a half. And then the next time I went down, COVID's in play, and we're talking about one airplane every 40 minutes. So clearly, and everything I was hearing basically was that things were going to change. Based on our strength coefficient for the runway, which is going to be 134,000 pounds, that would, on a regular basis, handle any of the smaller commuter jets, like the RJs and the Embraers we have. It would also accommodate most 737s and A320s. So that being the case, figured, okay, started talking to our engineers and our planning consultants, and basically said, all right, so that all being said, what's your typical wingspan for an A320 or a 737? What's the landing gear width, main to main, and hence the taxi lanes that you see that we just sort of came up with. Again, as far as the FAA is concerned, this first get-go in the infield, they don't consider the millings a permanent improvement, and they don't meet any kind of federal standard. So in other words, there's no environmental review. Typically, if you do anything, whether it's a private hangar, whether it's moving a fence on the airport that's permanent, then you have to get their environmental okay. And the planners basically, you'll note that those taxi lanes on the infield don't get very close to the runway. So the dynamic there was talking to the planners, getting the imaginary airspace that is utilized there. And what we did was basically use the tail height of a 737, which is the highest of any of those airplanes. And that's why you see those taxi lanes ending where they're at. The idea being that any of those airplanes get parked on Manston mat or PCP matting out there in the earth. The premise is not to go out there and start putting down acres and acres of pavement. And as far as I know, I'm not aware of any other airport anywhere that's done this. The airlines basically just park the airplanes. They're relying on places that have lots of pavement. And as you all know, there aren't a whole lot of those. And the places that do have a lot of pavement are slammed at this point. Victorville, Roswell, even down at San Bernardino, a lot of those places, they're nailed. So, and then the CARES Act grant comes up. What can we do with $69,000? And from my standpoint, well, we're going to have all the millings left over from the runway project. We offered those to Public Works as a trade for those taxi lanes they helped us build. And they finally decided, you know, we really don't need those. You can just store them at the airport and you can use them on additional taxi lanes. So in essence, you see out there on the crosswind runway, moving the fence out, and I can't remember now what the distance is. It's roughly 3,000 feet long by about 200 or 300 feet in. And then we use the same formula. We basically take the city surveyors and the city public works crew when they have the time, and we go out after we've relocated the fence and we build those taxi lanes. And again, if we're talking about regional jets or Embraers, with that setup, we can probably accommodate close to 200. Again, the PCP and the Manston mat dynamic is what we use and play out there. The one nice thing off of that side of the crosswind runway is the cattle outside the fence have taken care of most of the brush, which is nice. And that area is relatively flat, so there shouldn't be a whole lot of issues. and there's no drainage in that area either. So that's kind of the quick overview of trying to get ahead of the curve. Again, the dynamics that I keep hearing on the news and you read, and some of the contacts who are talking to the airlines, nobody appears to be, they appear to be extremely conservative. These changes don't look like they're going to morph into full service again anytime soon, just based on public confidence. And again, this is the part of the US where people need to be parking airplanes because of corrosion. And again, our rates are relatively low. We've not been charging landing fees, and my premise basically is to build the stuff up, start filling the airport up, and then all of a sudden we come back on the landing fee dynamic. But the dynamic is to make this place attractive to people to where they really want to come here. So that all being said, any questions?
Steve, this is Bill. What do you mean we come back to the landing fee dynamic? Tell me about that.
Since the city took over the airport, other than I think Ameriflight, and I'm not even sure on that, we've not been charging landing fees. And I've yet to find a definitive schedule that's pretty straight up that basically speaks to that. I know that that was done in the past, but I can't seem to find any records, surprise, surprise, that indicate that there's been any practice in the last few years, even the last couple of years of KAA, where that was a regular practice. Scott might have a sense of that because he's been involved both present and past, but yeah, since the city's had it, we've not been charging those.
Is this for aircraft above a certain weight category?
That is correct. Yeah, typically it's above 12,500 pounds. I'm assuming that's the case here, but I don't know that for a fact.
Well, it seems to me if we're trying to attract business, that's not our first step to start adding fees, especially if people are paying to park here.
No, and I agree. I agree exactly with what you're saying. From my standpoint, we get the customer base in here, and then just like the fees in regards to a monthly charge to whoever is maintaining the airplanes here, it's sort of like the rental, the 3% rental increase. We do a survey. We look at other airports are doing. Based on that, we assess that, and worst case scenario, you take the middle of the road and you bump your rates up. But you do it in a transparent method where everybody's on board and they have a sense of what's happening so they can plan for it. But yeah, I would agree, this is not the time to do it. I'm sorry if I misspoke and I gave that impression.
Steve, this is Dave. Did I understand you correctly? You saw one aircraft land in 40 minutes at McCarran?
That is correct. When you look it up, the traffic numbers at McCarran, Los Angeles, Atlanta, I don't know where they're at now, but 2 months into this whole COVID thing, they were down 97 to 98%.
Dave, the tower was actually closed. It was VFR uncontrolled at McCarran for a while.
That would have been the time to fly to McCarran.
Yeah, you could have. I've done a little bit digging on this. In Midway, they closed a runway to park airliners. I've got a friend in northern Illinois, runs an airport there, and he said they're charging $4,000 a month to park airliners on closed taxiways and that sort of thing. The FAA has put a lot of heat on them to stop that because closed runways are bad news. They're crosswind runways for a reason. So I think it's reasonable to assume that the airlines did not immediately run out and put the airplane somewhere else, because they have to have a storage company that's going to take care of it. They got to decide what they're going to do. It's much easier with all the turmoil to just go park at any place they can park it and pay the price. But they're running out of permission, and they're probably running out of money to pay that kind of price to park an airplane when they can get it parked here or other storage facilities a lot cheaper. So that it's already started to come in here, and I think there'll be a lot more of it. I do have one suggestion, Steve, on your map. I would take that new fence that's parallel to the runway and run it all the way north to the other fence. And I believe that line is virtually identical to the line on the master plan that they plan to release the area to the east, to the east for non-aviation uses. So that would become that line, and the fence is already there if you did it that way.
Yeah, I'll look into that and get an estimate in regards to what that might run.
You shouldn't need hardly any fencing because you're just moving it. You just got to, they'll make you pay for the posts and concreting them, but you should need very, very little extra fencing because you got about that same linear footage that you're removing.
Yeah, I'll check that out. That's a great idea.
Any other questions, comments to Steve on that issue? It'll be nice to see a lot more airplanes in here. There's no question about that. And the marketplace sure says to me that's what's going to happen. There's not a whole lot of choices, and if we get somebody else who will do a real good job here with a storage program, then I think we've got it made.
I have just one comment for Steve.
Go ahead.
Steve, I just want to let you know that a couple of weeks ago, my sister who works for the FAA in DC told me that the FAA was scrambling to try to find parking places for all the airplanes. So it was a real problem for them.
Yeah,
Did you tell her we had them?
yeah.
I did tell her, and I gave her Steve's phone number, and I think Steve has her phone number.
Yep. It's no, as this whole thing continues, I don't see where people can ignore us, to be honest. The cost differentials just and the climate and the distance from Vegas and the fact that we have warehousing and all that sort of stuff. I mean, this is natural. It really is.
A lot of changes were coming anyway before COVID. A lot of big stuff was going out of service, and all the older 7.3s. They're also gearing up to take those at Mesa, but we may very well get our share of them. Don't know about that. Okay, next item is the sign. What you've got is the drawings for the sign that's downtown on across Beale Street. We've kicked around, I have personally with many people, I don't think we did discuss it a little bit one time in a meeting. It would be nice to, at least in my opinion, to make a similar sign, doesn't have to be lighted, that would be on the air side out in front of the terminal in the area that we're going to have landscape. And so what I'm looking for is conceptual approval of that. Or an alternative, because just a piece of plywood hung on the fence nearby is pretty tacky. I think we need to do something a little better than that. We do have a steel fabricator here that's my guess would be cheaper than anybody else that we go out to bid with. And the real question is how high the poles or the arch and how wide. Obviously, it's not going to be, what is it, 120 feet or something or thereabouts downtown. We don't need that kind of sign, but we need one that we can see probably 150 feet away. It can actually read. My guess is between the terminal and the old tower and the arch, if they got off the taxiway, they'd know that's where the central point is to go. So this is throw out for discussion and hammer away at it.
I like the concept of it. Not sure what size or scale you'd like to do, because I see the dimensions here for the big sign downtown. One of the other thoughts I had, I noticed it has the Route 66 signs on it. I was going to suggest replacing one of those with the Kingman Army Airfield insignia on one side and leave the Route 66 on the other side.
Yes, I've given it thought too. And right now we come out the door heading out towards the ramp and we've got a shade. If we, like the front of that shade area where it ends, if we could tie into that and maybe put it over that above it right there, would be leading into the doorway going in. So when you're coming in and out, it's a natural progression off the ramp through the center and right into the building. Is my
Okay,
thought.
but one question on that would be, if we do it like the one downtown, thank you for visiting type of thing on the backside that they would see going out to the airplane. If we put it real close to the arch, you wouldn't see that unless it was only slightly higher than the arch and out a few feet. If we went out, somewhere near where the walkway parallel to the ramp is, or back 5 feet, let's say, we could have, I don't know what, 10, 12 foot at the bottom of the arch and 8, 10 feet from pole to pole. It wouldn't be that hard. There's starting a little wind loading on it. I think it'd be a one piece bolt on the columns, but one piece sign with no problem transporting it. And just take put it in like a fence post. It's a little more than concrete than that, but there's plenty of dirt drills around. Once the fence is gone, we come in from the ramp side, drill the holes, pour the concrete, and the thing's done. It shouldn't be very expensive to build this, and I think it would kind of highlight the airport with the city and the couple of key things that are important: the Kingman Army Airfield and Route 66. I think that's a great idea too.
Yeah, mine is, I don't want to block the view. The whole thing of taking the fence down out front was so you can look out when you're eating and not have an impaired view, and moving it back to the shade gives you that effect. It wouldn't be an impairment. It would be, if we stick it out further, then we're getting into kids looking, the airplane takes off, it's at a 30-degree angle. You want to look up and see it. And that's where I'm headed. The look of you're eating and be able to see what's going on by moving the fence. That was the purpose of moving the fence. I agree with. Yeah.
That's a good point.
That's
so
what
we wouldn't have anything on the backside.
Right.
Or
we could make two little ones and put one out on the driveway side and one on that side, if they aren't real big, kind of do it that way too, or whatever. I mean, I don't know. It's just throwing that out there.
Well, if we ever redo the front, we could do something similar like that in front as part of the parking lot, redo. But that's way down the road.
Carl, do you have any idea on the expense?
Not really, but it sure isn't going to cost what the one downtown did. Certainly way under $10,000.
Carl,
we've got to put up a nice sign of some kind, because we've just got a 4x8 sheet of plywood up there. I think it's down right now, but it was on the fence, and we can put it off to the side. We have to put a couple small fences where the two walkways are, not fences, but signs that say pilots and passengers only beyond this. And then there's a little strip of grass out there, and we might as well bring this up too. It's part of that landscaping. The idea was to take that grass out and put some 2-inch rock or something like that that's white or red, that's contrasting color, that kind of makes a barrier. But Scott had an idea of using little roses, a bush. You don't want to hedge very high, but that does become a better barrier. And another one is cactus. The only thing, rose stickers and cactus stickers that don't go well with kids playing around out there. So I don't think that would work, but that doesn't mean there isn't an appropriate plant for that would perform the same function. So that, the question keeps getting bigger, and at some point, they're going to be working on this landscaping rather soon in that area. As soon as all that fencing is done, then we got to do something. And if we're going to put something out there that needs water, then they've got to go under that walk and give us I think in two places, give us a line for watering. So that, again, back to you.
Hey, Carl, this is Bill. Do you know, or perhaps Steve or Gary could tell us, when we do construction there at the airport, do we fall under the county building inspector or the city?
The county technically, a lot of things they don't seem to care about. We're zoned as airport. We do what we want to do. The things of normal buildings don't apply because setbacks, that sort of thing. Fire codes certainly do. Safety codes, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So we do have some leeway.
Regarding a safety code, I was in charge of putting a sign in at our church, and anything over 6 feet will have to be engineered. Not a big deal. We have city engineers, but just something to be aware of.
Yeah, and you would want to have that anyway, because we do have some wind loading, but that sign's not very high. I don't mean off the ground. It's very thick, so there's not a huge wind load. Probably would get by with a 4x4 steel column with 30 inches of concrete, something like that. Would be my guess. Is all it would take. And we've got a guy downtown that with a huge CNC laser cutter, and he can make those curves any way we want them. Just put them in a program, and you get a perfect job for relatively inexpensive. So we don't even have to leave town to get it done. If you get it done out of town, you just the delivery and setup adds a whole bunch to it. But I don't think it would be that bad, and I could be wrong.
Just real quick, Scott's right on as far as the placement. We'll have to blue stake it out there because, as you know, Unisource's power line runs right about 3 or 4 foot back from that fence line in the grass. So we've got to certainly respect that part of it there. And during the fence moving, we also did relocate all the necessary plumbing so that it didn't interfere with any of the fencing stuff as it relates to the landscaping. I did query Lisa prior to the meeting. Our fence people assured us they would be done on the 19th. So certainly hopefully we can hold them to that. So
the last I heard, is this still correct, Gary, that the southernmost piece is going to be grass, the northernmost piece is going to be desert, non-watering, maybe some cactus, which won't create the fly problem as much. The middle piece I wasn't sure about. What's the status right now?
Carl, I'll have to follow up on that, but you're right. One of the things we needed to change was the grass and the drainage right there in front of the restaurant where the outdoor dining is, because that's a problem, and as was the bug problem there too. So, that's the one thing that we'll be looking at really closely is what we're going to do on that, because we still, I know Steve had made a contact with our parks people to get out. We have to kill the gophers there too anyway. So, they've already done a pretty good job on that. So yeah, we're going to make sure that, on the monument restoration and all that comes into play there. But so, yeah, it'll be quite different and mainly for drainage purposes right off there in front of the restaurant proper part.
And I talked to the landscape guy, the guy that was there when I was there, about how it had to slope away from the little block wall there in front of the restaurant, and all of it has to go up towards the administration building because that's where the drains are. And he saw that and understood that, but he has to drop, I don't know, it's hard to tell how much grass is there. There might be 4 inches of grass and he only needs 2 inches of dirt, but we'll find out.
Well, again, like you said, we need to certainly make it welcoming. So, yeah, Carl, if we can do this one for 10 grand, that's a whole lot better than the 130 or 40,000 they spent downtown. So,
Well, I've got a guy that will give me a bid, I think. I don't, he asked for an estimate, but they can put it in their computer and pretty much give you a bid for the same amount of time. But I hesitated to do anything until I had a pretty good idea what we want. What we say on it is not so important, but if we have that style and that arch, then it's only a question of how big. And I'll go out there and see what we can do to go around that arch, and it's an existing one. And I don't think it's a bad idea, Scott. I mean, it saves writing it up anyway on the back side of the sign, make it a little cheaper, and we don't have to have that, but we could try and duplicate what we have downtown, or at least complement it, so that I think a lot of people will notice it, quite frankly, that, hey, that's neat.
Carl?
You kind of get a theme there.
I was just going to suggest that I would like you to move forward and get it scaled to fit outside the front of that awning there, and then see if we can get a kind of a price tag on it.
Yeah, okay, I can do that. That's not a problem.
another thing.
There is let me tell you that just downhill from UPS is a steel fabricator, and they opened up year and a half ago, came over from Bakersfield. Well, now the owner of the company is here. He lives here. He goes back to Bakersfield. So it's, he's making a transition. And I didn't realize that until I talked to Sonny, who runs the shop. And he says, oh, the other boss is here. He can do it for you, no problem. So it's a little better than it was before.
Carl, we can't tempt you to put a little neon on it?
Well, do you have neon downtown? Well,
that's
I
what
I don't have a problem
the
with
arch downtown is. Ultimately, we changed that very dull lettering into neon, and we have a legacy signs here who's really quite good at that. But again, it's just one of those things where we've kind of been taking on that whole genre of this is the town that is 66 and neon was the way of life here. So just some food for thought. It's not quite as expensive as you would think.
I will pursue that. I had a neon shop right next to me when I first got married, and that's a heck of a skill and beautiful work. So I'm big on neon. I was sorry to see it go away.
And literally last forever. We got signs in Kingman here that have had same neon gas for going on 60 years. They still work. Crazy, huh?
Yeah, great. Any more comments? Okay, I think I probably should have a motion to move forward on this. We can't, all we can do is get a estimate / bid on a sign that will be outside the arch, then appropriate in size and shape, and then see what happens.
I make a motion to move forward with getting a price for putting that up in front of the awning outside.
I'll second it.
Okay, everybody clear on who did it? Okay. Question? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right. Well, now I got to go to work.
Announcements.
I have a question for Steve. Didn't know where to insert this, but Steve, did we have a burglary at the airport within the last month or so of some equipment or somebody's personal equipment?
Yeah, we've had two actually. And this is probably about 2 months ago. A break-in at Mr. Blumenthal's where they stole some batteries.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but this is not an agendized item. I apologize. You won't be able to discuss it at this time.
I think it's part of the manager's report, is it not?
Well, I did mention it, but I can bring it back. Again, we have increased security, so I'll go with Annie's guidance on this.
Okay. You can call him and find out, and I'll tell, he knows about, no, he doesn't. There's one more to add to it. Okay, any announcements?
For the next agenda announcements, I'd like to be putting on navigation and easements. I know we've talked about it, and I'm supposed to be following up, so I guess we'll start that up again. The other thing I'd like to discuss is the marketing plan, or what we're going to attempt to do that way. And
That's for the airport?
Yes, for the airport. Yes. Yes.
All aspects of the airport? Okay.
Yes. And then the AMPS program, which is the pavement management or whatever that the state puts out. I'd like to have that on the agenda too.
Does anybody know anything about that?
It's all online.
Spell it again, AMPS?
Yeah, APMS.
Oh, APMS. And who would we get to report on that?
That'll be me.
Okay. All right, any other issues or announcements on the agenda or anything else?
Well,
What you tell me, Tim, you had a $2 million contribution already for your museum.
not yet. I was going to, two things real quick. I was going to mention and thank Dave Amspoker. He's participating in the Angel Flight program, which is bringing relief supplies to some of the folks in our area. And I believe he's the first that I know of at our airport doing that. I don't know if anyone else is participating, but he got started with that program, and I congratulate and thank him for doing that. The other item is we're still looking, there's a lot of things yet to be decided, but we're still looking at doing some sort of a fly-in event around October 10. We normally had our Kingman Air Fest slated for that time period, but we may do a scaled down version of it, maybe combined with Young Eagles this time. And Red Stars are also scheduled for that weekend for the formation clinic. So more news to come on that, but we are looking at doing some sort of a community airport function on that weekend.
I would not be surprised if the turnouts will be much higher, because from what I understand, the resorts, both near and well, drivable, not so much with airliners, have just taken off like a rocket since the restrictions have come off all over the country. So there's probably a lot of people who want to get back with it. Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.